The reason why they want this disunity between Africans and African Americans is to maintain global white supremacy. A united African and Black Americans will be a powerful global force.
People are scared. There's stories that you get off the plane, you get bit by a mosquito. If you're driving down the street, you're gonna get. There's horror stories that scared people from going to Africa before hip hop was around. There's been a lot of lies told to American people about what's going on over there. And one thing about us African Americans and Africans, we don't communicate. We don't talk. We don't see a reason to talk. We don't even get along. There's a lot of Africans that don't like African Americans at all.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're watching me from. Welcome back to my YouTube space. Now, the video I'm going to react today is about African Americans or Black Americans, how they were lied about Africa. And I'm going to react on this video of one musician or Black American musician called NAS. Back then, 16 years ago or 16 years ago, NAS did an interview and he said why a lot of African or African American musicians does not perform in Africa. And I get it that this thing, we are not ending it, because up to now, some people are still lied about Africa. Some musicians, Black American musicians, do not perform in Africa because of some stereotypes. So this thing was there back then, 16 years ago, and even right now, it has not ended. Just the other day, Kendrick Lamar was to perform in Rwanda, or he performed in Rwanda. But before performing in Rwanda, he was told that Rwanda is not a good country. There's a lot of war, a lot of chaos. Everything bad is in Rwanda. And even one of Nigerian musician cancelled her show in Rwanda. But Kendrick Lamar came and performed in Rwanda. That's the story of another day. But this about NAS, what he said about why they don't perform or they don't come in Africa, I want you to listen on it, and then we'll come back again and react.
Africa is like, you know what it is, it's like the birthplace. I've only been to Africa like 3 times. I've been there once for my birthday, and I've been there like twice for like a corporate show, sort of like what we're doing here today, and that's where I met you at. Let's go straight to it. People are scared. There's horror stories about Africa that's out of this world. There's stories that you get off the plane, you get bit by a mosquito. If you're driving down the street, you're gonna get. There's horror stories that scared people from going to Africa before hip hop was around. And when I finally got there, I didn't know what to expect. You're never gonna have enough security, so I didn't bring much. I probably brought one person with me, and brought my jewelry. If they're gonna take it, they're gonna take it. It's theirs anyway. So I went there and I figured out there's been a lot of lies told to American people about what's going on over there. And one thing about us African Americans and Africans, we don't communicate. We don't talk. We don't see a reason to talk. We don't even get along. There's a lot of Africans that don't like African Americans at all. They look down on us. They got their own little racial names for us. We've been pulled apart for years. So I mention a lot about Africa because, when I grew up in a time like Bob Marley was saying a lot of stuff. I wanted to know why he was talking about Africa Unite, and I wanted to know what Roots was about. So out of my own curiosity, I just started to learn stuff, and at that time, the 5% Nation was on the rise. So I got some of those lessons, and I couldn't keep up with it, so I just kept growing and growing. And my name is Arabic, Egyptian, Nasir, so that already made me start to dig into where we come from and why we're in the position we're at. But to get back to your question, man, people scared. They scared to go over there, and they have horror stories, man. And I think some of those Africans need to make an effort to show us that when we come there, that we're gonna be all right. And I've been in Nigeria, and it almost made me cry to look at the conditions of most of the people there. And there's no connection, and we got a lot of work to do. So it's beyond hip hop, you know. But I think hip hop is an answer to get us to start communicating and start rebuilding our long lost family between Africa and America. I think this is the beginning. If you get more people like yourself coming over here, and you get those brothers over there to realize when we coming over here, we're making major moves. We're bringing serious artists to this place. We got to change it. We got to change the way the conditions are in Africa. We got to. And hip hop artists, we can start by raising some voice, but NAS can't go to South Africa and get 100,000 people like Bono. There's a lot of stories behind that to why he can and Nas can't. When Nas should be able to get 200,000 people to come out. Let me not shit on myself, because maybe I can get 300,000. I haven't tried it yet, but I'm gonna need y'all help. You know what I'm saying? I think we have to all take the responsibility to say, if we want to make a difference, let's not talk about it, let's really be about it. I don't know if that answered the question. It's a long conversation.
Yo, and I also want to weigh in too, because you did kind of end the comment with, and so then Pharrell ain't coming. So I want to weigh in on that a little bit too. And to Buck's point, we do really work hard, and we're like on the road all the time. And you know what? I'm so exhausted. I don't know if this is like, I don't know if you've seen Fight Club. I don't know if like these guys are imaginary on stage right now and I'm really sleeping, or I'm really in a press conference right now. Because we're like exhausted. We're overly worked. And because, you know, the recession is where it is right now, we've definitely got to work a lot harder. And so when, you know, we ask for a ton of money, it's because we are spending our time. See, what people don't realize is that, like, you know, after this press conference, you'll either go back to your day job or you'll go home and do whatever you gotta do. We have to continue to do this, like, you know, 15, 16 hours a day. So when you're working so hard, physically and mentally, because remember, you also have to create. You're not just like, you know, this is not a Broadway play where you learn your lines. You have to create that stuff. So like when we ask for the money that we ask for, it's because we're like really working hard. And to get to the original part, I've been to Africa too. And I loved it, and I was very surprised to see snow. I was very surprised that I needed a bomber jacket when I was in Cape Town. It was freezing, right? But at the same time, there are a lot of rumors and there are a lot of myths, but you have to understand that like a lot of it is supported by the images we see on TV. The leadership over there has to change too. And they need to strengthen themselves in terms of their infrastructure and not like sell everything to China. Because another thing that people are not really covering here is that China in like, you know, the next 10 to 15 years is gonna own Africa because they're buying everything up over there like for pennies on the dollar. No one wants to talk about that. But they'll just say, oh, you know, African Americans, you know, have this perception of Africa. Well, you know what? You're not providing us with anything that we can see that looks particularly appetizing. It was only until I went to Durban and I was like, oh wow, this is nice. Or when I went to South Africa and I was like, oh, okay, it's really interesting. And you get to see people of color with wealth. That's not the images we see. You know what we see 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning. We see babies, big stomachs, swollen heads, and flies.
And we also know artists that come back home with horror stories. They just scared.
The artists tell you that.
The artists come back.
They come back and tell you. They're not telling you.
They basically told me never go to Nigeria.
Yeah.
And stuff like that.
The same person
Well,
probably.
let's do this because I think before we go branch too far off, which I think is
No, but I mean, when you bring something up like that, I'm gonna be a little bit sensitive because I mean that's serious. You know, I am a descendant. That's number one. Mixed. Nonetheless, all of us are after being over here for a couple of 100 years.
But I think
it's relative.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, the fact that you're here today because of Smirnoff bringing you here, and I know they endorse your radio show and your TV show. That's an example of how we can start crushing the stereotypes and showing the truth and the images of Africa and how artists could benefit from being there and how Africa could benefit from those artists being there.
Yeah,
But
no, listen, and forgive me for going too long. All I'm saying is, I mean, it's not rocket science that anybody can just look at this and go, okay, well, what's the difference? Because you're doing it for Smirnoff here. As Nas said, when he went, it was a corporate event. So what's the difference between being over there and being here? And I would like to, you know, defend my position as an artist and a person who asks for certain things and, you know, and all of our basic requirements, to just let people know that there's really no difference. If, you know, Smirnoff would have had to stay in Africa, it would have been the same thing. But when you mention the difference and the distance between us, I'm gonna have to defend myself.
This is funny that you are being told in Africa there is mosquito, you will be bitten by mosquito and then you will become sick, you will die. A lot of stereotypes. How can you be lied? How can they tell you that in Africa there is mosquito, so it will bite you and you are going to fall sick and you are going to die? Man, but NAS has said it openly that they were lied about Africa. 16 years down the line, right now, still black Americans are being lied about Africa. There is a reason why they do not want African Americans and African indigenous to come together. There is a reason why they will keep lying about Africa. There is a reason why they will keep telling you that Africa is poor. There is a reason why they don't want you as a black American, African American, to trace your roots back to Africa. There is a reason why they keep on putting this narrative that Africans don't like African American. So we keep on fighting every day. What is this reason? Why are they putting these stereotypes to make sure that African Americans and Africans indigenous do not unite? Tell me in the comment section, what do you think is the main reason? What is it that is making them, they don't want the unity between black Americans and Africans? Why? The reason is to push or to keep Africans and black Americans divided. This reason is intentional. Yes, it is intentional, and it serves powerful interests that have historical benefited from this disunity. Some people are benefiting from the disunity of Africans and black Americans. This disunity is intentionally. Why they keep on telling black Americans about Africa, the badness of Africa, the negative side of Africa alone, it is intentionally. And these reasons is for their own benefit, not for the benefit of anyone else, not for benefits of Africans or benefits of African Americans, but it's for their own good. Now, musicians for long, black American musicians are thriving. They are doing good. They are the A-list musicians in the world. And the fact that they cannot come and perform in Africa, it was so disturbing to me. I didn't understand what is the reason why black American musicians are not coming to perform in Africa, or USA musicians at large are not coming to perform in Africa, until I saw this video of NAS that has opened my eyes. Like, they were lied like any other black Americans, like any other citizen. These musicians were lied to about Africa and making them not to come to perform in Africa. The saga I've told you about Kendrick Lamar, he was told about Rwanda. But he came to Rwanda and people came in numbers, large numbers, and they performed there. Just the other day, Chris Brown has said he cannot come to perform in Kenya because the caliber of Kenya is not of his popularity. So there is things Africans or black Americans are being told about Africa, and if you are not keen, if you don't take your time and research about Africa, then you will be misled and you will say Africa is bad. But deep down, it is not that Africa is bad, but some people are benefiting from these lies. And the people who are benefiting from these lies, we know them. We know them. One of the things that Africans or black Americans who are lied to about Africa, number one, to me, they have told you, NASA has told you, they say there is sickness in Africa, mosquito, malaria. You cannot come to Africa. It's not conducive for you. So it is for, you cannot go there. Just don't go there because it's not good. They tell us that, they tell them that Africa is a one country, not a continent. So when we see these interviews on TikTok, when people are being asked name a country in Africa or name a city in Africa, they know Africa is a country. Yeah, they take Africa as a entity and not a country or a continent. Many Black Americans were taught to see Africa as a single monolithic place rather than a diverse continent with 54 states or 54 countries. So when they say Africa is poor, each and every country in Africa is poor, starting from South Africa, Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya. Now that's what they believe. But Africa is a continent with 54 countries with a lot of languages. But right now we have internet. A lot of people know about it. But some too are still ignorant to believe or to learn or to study about Africa. Right now, even you ask some people around, they will tell you Africa is single. I've seen a video of Black Americans saying that they don't know the capital city of any city in Africa, or they are being asked what is the capital city of Africa. They'll go ahead saying Wakanda, South Africa. Still, some people are still ignorant. I don't know why, but as a Black American or an African in diaspora or African American, it's your time. You need to know what is Africa about. Another narrative or that Black Americans were told is that some African leaders were involved in transatlantic slave trade. The full story is more complex. European powers drove the demand for enslaved people, manipulated African politics, and used superior weapons to demand cooperation. Many African societies resisted, and some were victims themselves. The portrayal of Africa as fully conflict ignores European aggression and forced abduction. Now, they tell us Africans sold Black Americans. They will tell us some of our African brothers sold Black Americans into slavery. And now African Americans will be there saying that, yo, you sold us. But they are hiding the fact that Europeans were so aggressive and they forced these African leaders to sell their own people. They will not say that part. They will only say the part where Africans leaders sold African Americans to slavery or Black Americans to slavery. So, when you are believing that, you will be putting in mind that my brothers or cousins betrayed me. But deep down, there's a full story behind that. There's another story behind that a lot of people don't know. Another stereotype is Africa is poor and underdeveloped. They will tell these musicians don't go to Africa because it's poor, it's underdeveloped. Now, this is a narrative that mainstream media often send there live, and nations like Nigeria, Kenya, Ghana are thriving industry in tech, finance, and culture, but they won't tell you about that. They will only tell you that Africa is poor. They will not tell you that some countries in Africa are doing well. They won't tell you that South Africa, Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya are doing well. No. They will tell you Africa is poor and underdeveloped. So some Black Americans, they believe that because they don't want to do research, and they go ahead ignoring the fact that Africa is a great. Another thing is like Africans don't like or care about Black Americans. This is a stereotype that Africans or Black Americans were told about. And this is still the narrative that Black Americans musicians are being told, that Africans don't like them. Don't go to perform there because they don't like you. They will not come. Another thing is that Africa has no history before colonization. They say that the history of Africa starts after colonization. Western education often downplays the great civilization of Africa, such as Mali, Songhai, Kush, and Great Zimbabwe. It also ignores Africans' contribution to science, medicine, mathematics, and philosophy. Yeah. they only say that Africa did not have history before colonization. This is a topic that we'll talk about it. Another thing is that Africa don't consider Black American African. That is stereotype they tell Black Americans. So Black Americans, they don't want to come to Africa because they believe that Africans don't consider them as Africans. I was talking about why or what are the reasons why they don't want the unity between Africans and Black Americans because I've been sitting down and thinking about what are they benefiting? What are their benefits? Or who is benefiting from this disunity? Who is behind all this disunity? And I came up with these answers. I don't know if it will be good for you or you will understand or not, but one of the reasons why they want this disunity between Africans and Black Americans is to maintain global white supremacy and control. Reason why they want this disunity between Africans and African Americans is to maintain global white supremacy, is to maintain the control of white supremacy. A united African and Black Americans will be a powerful global force. Western powers, especially former colonial rule, have longer feared this unity because it could challenge their economic and political dominance over Africans' vast resources and Black Americans' economic strength. Get that in your head. So, for them to maintain the global white supremacy and control, they are putting this disunity between Black American and African. Number 2, to maintain economic exploitation of Africa. Africa is rich of resources like gold, oil, and rare mineral. If Africans and Black Americans worked together economically, they could control and profit from these resources instead of allowing Western corporations to exploit them. Keeping Black Americans disconnected from Africa ensures that they don't invest, trade, or collaborate with African nations in ways that they could make Africa a self-sufficient. They are putting this disunity to make sure African Americans or Black Americans do not invest in Africa. And that's why Africa or Black Americans, they will say they are still poor even though they know a lot of things. It's because they do not have access to invest in Africa. Africa is the backbone of investment. Africa is the backbone of economic. If you don't get a chance to invest in Africa, then you still have a long way to go. Number 3, if Black Americans had a direct connection to Africa, they could build businesses, import goods, and create wealth without relying on Western cooperation. This will weaken the economic grip that companies in the US and Europe have over Black communities, where they profit from Black spending without giving back. So, they do not want the Black American economic independence. That is the reason why they will deny Black Americans rights into Africa, or they will make Black Americans not to come in Africa. Number 4, through history, leaders like Malcolm X, Kwame Nkrumah, and Muammar Gaddafi pushed for a united front between Africans and the diaspora. A strong alliance could lead to political movement that challenges Western imperialists, demand reparations, and create policies that benefit Black people worldwide. And they don't want that. Number 5, the fear of black global identity. The fear of black global identity. Western government and media have long tried to control black identity by feeding narratives that separate Africans from black Americans. Hollywood, news outlets, and schools co-curriculum promote negative images of Africa to prevent black Americans from seeing it as a homeland or a place of opportunity. So they fear the fear of black global identity. This again is a divide and conquer strategy. As we know, when they divide us, it's easy for them to conquer. When they divide black people, it's easy for them to dominate. When they divide black people, it's easy for them to, just to be there. So it is strategy and control over black concerns, So this is intentional doing that black Americans are being lied to about Africa. Is intentionally that black Americans are being told lies about Africa. But we can do some things to make this happen. What I'm doing right now, I'm trying to connect black Americans and Africans. So there is some things we can do to end these lies. There is things we can do as black Americans and Africans. And what we can do is to control their own narrative through media, education, and cultural exchange. We can build economic bridges by investing in Africa and supporting black business worldwide. We can strengthen Pan-African movement that promote unity, self-reliance, and resistance against external exploitation. The more connected black people and across the globe, the harder it is for them to control us. The harder it is for them to penetrate, because once we are united, they cannot divide us. It's easy for them to control us. It's easy for them to control the narrative or to, because we are weak. In biology, we say we have, or is it chemistry, weak bonds, weak van der Waals. Electrons are free. The bond is not covalent, it's not strong bond between Africans. So it's easy for white people to continue their narrative. That's why even up to now, black people, black Americans, Africans Americans, and Africans are still fighting. On social media, words are out there that we don't like each other. There is no unity. So it's easy for them to continue their colonization, exploitation, to conquer, because they have divided us with their narrative, with their stereotypes. So what do? Let's unite. NAS has spoken here. A lot of musicians have speak out here. A lot of black Americans have speak out here. Why or how they were lied to about Africa. But a lot of them right now, they know the reality, they know the truth. So if you know the truth, go out there. Share the message with others. If you find a good video like this one, share it with others so that we as black people, we can come together. Once we come together, we will conquer. Tell me what you think of the comment section about this video. Until next episode, peace be with you.